Going live. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Friday. Every Friday at noon, we go live with an environmentally focused topic, and today we are joined by our chapter director, Pam Mackey-Taylor. She'll be talking about constitutional amendment, setting hurdles on income tax increases, specifically SJR11. And so I will hand it on over to her.
So thank you, Brianna. So the constitutional amendment that we're going to talk about, as Brianna said, is SJR11. And that is going to change how the income tax increases happen if this passes through the legislature and then through the voters. So the current process of the legislature wants to change income taxes is that they can do it with a simple majority, and then the governor signs it into law. And a simple majority means half of the legislature plus one vote. Now, the changes that I'm talking about when I talk about income tax changes, they include increasing or decreasing the taxes themselves, flattening the rate structure, setting a single tax rate, adding surcharges. It would include deductions, credits, exemptions. Anything that shows up on your state income tax returns can be affected by a simple majority. Now, on the next slide, we're going to talk about what the legislature is attempting to do. They have this bill that would change the process, first with a constitutional amendment. And the amendment would require 2/3 majority of both chambers to increase income taxes or to pass any new tax on income or legal and special reserves. Now, a simple majority would be required to lower income taxes. So it's a higher hurdle if they want to raise taxes. Now, it restricts the court challenges to 1 year after enactment of laws implementing the income tax changes. So they're really trying to restrict what happens with changes to income taxes. Now, on the next slide, we're going to talk about why the Sierra Club opposes SJR11. This constitutional amendment would effectively tie the hands of future legislatures and how they're going to handle the state's finances. And this becomes particularly an issue when the revenues are not meeting the expenses, when the reserve funds are drained, and when the public expects that the services they're getting, wanting, or needing from state government need to be met or expected to be met, and the services cannot be paid for with existing revenues. When that happens, future legislatures will need to have all available ways to fund the government. In other words, every tool needs to be in the toolbox. Now, let's talk on the next slide why this is a problem. The financial situation in Iowa is precarious. We have been dealing with billion-dollar budget deficits this year, and we'll be dealing with it next year. The state is using one-time money in the Taxpayer Relief Fund, that's one of these special reserve accounts, to make up the difference and to pay for one-time expenses. At some point, there will be a day of reckoning. And at the current rate, the Taxpayer Relief Fund will soon run short of funds, perhaps within a couple of years. There will be few options when the state's revenues and reserves can't meet expenses. One of the things could be cutting budgets, laying off people, cutting services. Another thing could be raising revenues. And a third thing that could happen is offloading expenses and services to other levels of government, such as cities and counties, that may not be able to offer increased expenses. Now, the likelihood is that all three of these things may happen, but let's talk about what happens with raising revenue and why this is a problem. On the next slide, we're going to talk about why these tax credits, this day of reckoning could be a real problem. And the question is, what's going to be cut? The easiest thing would be the private school vouchers, followed by state troopers, snowplows, dealing with diseases that affect livestock, public health, inspections of nursing homes, the money spent in prisons, the court system, economic development. In other words, all the services that government provides at the state level. Or the next question is, how do you raise revenues? Now, the choices are limited on raising revenues: income tax, sales tax, fees for services. Income tax may be the best choice since it can target those who are most able to pay with a graduated income tax or with an income tax surcharge. But this constitutional amendment, SJR11, would effectively tie the hands of the future legislature, making it very difficult to increase those income taxes. Now, on the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit more about why this is a problem. There are bright, flashing red lights that say, stop, beware, tread carefully. A tax increase most likely will be very contentious and an incredibly high hurdle to jump, even though the citizens may be clamoring for the services to be funded. Getting a supermajority on any major issue is difficult. And we've seen that already this year with two appointments that needed a supermajority. The Senate wasn't able to get a supermajority to name Larry Johnson to the Health and Human Services position. And the other thing is that Tom Abramson was supposed to be serving on the State Board of Education, but he was unable to be confirmed with a supermajority, a 2/3 majority. We've already seen gridlock in the Iowa legislature, which results in failing to pass bills even with a simple majority. Eminent domain has been languishing for a number of years. Property tax reform has been difficult to pass over the last few years. The net effect would be that the minority would be ruling the income tax policy. This constitutional amendment is not needed. It doesn't move our state forward. It doesn't fix things that are broken, but it could significantly break things should Iowa face a shortfall in revenue and no way to fund services that Iowans expect and need. Now, let's talk about the amendment process and what happens next. And that's on the next slide. And the constitutional amendments must be passed by both chambers in 2 consecutive general assemblies. Now, a general assembly lasts 2 years, and then it starts when an election has just happened and new people are installed into the office, and then it runs for 2 years until the next election. And then if it passes 2 general assemblies, it'll be on the ballot for the next election. So far, SJR11 or its predecessor bill, which was SJR 2006, has already passed the House and the Senate in 2024. It passed the Senate in 2025, and it is just waiting for the House vote. And the House is going to be taking this up on Saturday. They're meeting in an extended overtime session. So it's on the calendar for Saturday. And so the last slide will tell you what you can do. And the thing that we need to have you do is right now, contact your state representative and ask the representative to oppose constitutional amendment SJR11. And on this slide, it shows the webpage link where you can find the email address of your House member. Or if you don't know who your House member is, there is a screen where you can put your address in and it will tell you who your representative is. As I said, this is coming up tomorrow. And it may be deferred for one reason or another into the next week, but we're in the last days of the legislative session and this is already scheduled for tomorrow. So please contact your representative and tell them no on SJR 11. And with that, I'll entertain questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pam. Um, And it doesn't look like we have any questions. I know this is kind of a big topic, so if anybody does have questions, please put them in the chat or comments box and we will get back to them at a later date. But again, call your legislators, your House representatives specifically. We got that link right there. We'll put that in the chat as well. And thank you so much for joining us today. We will see you again next Friday for another Lunch and Learn. Have a great day, everybody. Bye bye.